Welcome, everybody, to Postgame Takeaways with Inside ND Sports. I'm Tyler James. He's the one and only Eric Hansen, and we're here to share our postgame takeaways from Notre Dame's 34-23 loss to Ohio State. Eric, what was your biggest takeaway from Notre Dame's national championship loss?
Well, it was kind of a short-term and long-term take. I think the short-term take was, wow, that was bizarre because they almost came back and had a chance to make it really interesting at the end. From the long-term view, I felt like this was so different than the 2012, 2018, and 2020 games, and that I think that there was a little bit of an element of a need to tear down and build back up, where I think this is a platform from where Notre Dame can build. With everything that went wrong, I think you can see big picture what's right with this program and that they're going to be back. How about you?
Yeah, I was more narrowly focused.
Well, I had more coffee than you.
Bullet point number one was that Notre Dame's defense just had to be better. Like the fact that they gave up 4 touchdowns on consecutive drives after being handed a 7-0 lead. I would have never predicted that Notre Dame's defense would have looked that bad. I believe 214 rushing yards is the second most that Notre Dame's allowed this season. Quinshon Judkins' 70-yard run was the longest against Notre Dame this season. Notre Dame had only allowed 3 of 30-plus. Prior to that all season, Will Howard threw 4 incomplete passes. Things were clicking for Ohio State's offense, and Notre Dame was able to get a couple stops late, but not the big stop it needed once Notre Dame pulled within 1 score in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and to me, this is the reason why I felt like Ohio State, before the playoffs started, was the worst matchup for them, is because on offense, they can do everything. And if they're executing it, you've got to gamble, and you've got to hope that they don't execute those gambles, that the gamble throws them enough that your pressure works, or your loading up the box works, or whatever. And Notre Dame had to move away from some of the things that it does well. But you're right, they should have executed better. They ended up finding some answers later, but especially on third down. And that one third down was a killer. The 3rd and 11th from Ohio State's own territory with just outside of 2 minutes left, the 56-yard pass where the pressure didn't get home to Jeremiah Smith.
What did you think of that call? Do you think the pressure was the right idea and it just didn't work?
On 3rd and 11, I probably would not have done that. And Al Golden was second guessing himself. He goes, there's probably 15 different things I could have. Maybe 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, maybe I would have done it, just because I would have wanted Howard not to have been able to scramble. And but on 3rd and 11, I'm not sure that the run was a real threat there. And I'm not, it's easy for me to pick at that at this point, but
Right.
I understand his rationale, why he said he said, if it's a first down, it's game over. So I wanted to roll the dice and, give us our best shot. And that, unfortunately, put Christian Gray in single coverage against Jeremiah Smith, which was a good matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting, and this only just dawned on me now, is that the game last year came down to a big, I think it was a 3rd down, 3rd and long, where our Notre Dame was passive and sort of let Ohio State get a first down there, not intentionally, but it seemed like Notre Dame didn't put a lot of effort into either rushing the quarterback or playing tight coverage.
It was a 3-man rush. I remember it because we have a picture of it that Jeff Douglas took that's really good. And you can see the wide open passing lane from McCord to Emeka Egbuka. It was a 3rd and 19, and it got Ohio State, I think it was 21 yards and down to about the 2-yard line.
Yeah, and just on that, speaking of the 3rd down completion to Smith, Christian Gray was in coverage. He had a rough night. I looked to see what the first stats from Pro Football Focus was, and they credited Gray for allowing 6 catches for 126 yards in the game. So that means he allowed more yardage than any of his teammates, I think, combined. So a tough night for him. It seemed like Will Howard was aware of who he was guarding, whether it was Smith or Carnell Tate or Emeka Egbuka, and was having success sort of picking on whoever he was guarding.
Right. Well, and then offensively, Notre Dame started with a very impressive drive. It was 18 plays. They chewed up almost 10 minutes off the clock, converted 2 4th downs. Riley Leonard was involved in running 9 of the 18 plays, then was on the sideline puking after the series. And then they had to go away from Riley Leonard a little bit in the run game. Ohio State found answers, and you couldn't run Riley Leonard 30 times in the game. They ended up, I believe, running him 17, but Notre Dame only ended up running for 2 yards per carry. And again, I mean, this is an elite run defense. They were 3rd in the country and run defense, number 1 in total defense. Ohio State is difficult. I mean, they have all the pieces, and it's really something that they lost 2 games this season.
Yeah, I saw some people on social media being like, listing all the wins that Ohio State had and calling it, this is the most dominant season ever. It's like, well, you can't, to me, you can't be the most dominant and have lost twice. Like, yes, they had great wins and they deserve to be the national champs, but you can't lose twice and be dominant. Like, if we're comparing them to the greats of all time, I think that precludes them from being included. In terms of Notre Dame's offense, like, it really did fall apart fast there after that first drive. And I think you might want to question the play calling, but the penalties were the problem. I mean, the penalties and the mistakes, and Riley Leonard missed some easy throws. You get backed up in penalties, so that changes the way you play call. I know some people were frustrated with a 2nd and 24 run call, but I don't know that Notre Dame was picking up 24 yards with a couple of passes at that point either, with the way Riley Leonard was not exactly accurate throwing the ball. And then you have the snap that hits Mitchell Evans while he's in motion. I think Riley Leonard was taking blame for that, for the way the timing worked out. He's got to make sure that Mitchell Evans gets clear there before he's asking for the snap. But just a real bad situation while Notre Dame's defense is struggling. And the offense sort of fell apart fast, and at least fortunately for Notre Dame, was able to find some rhythm in the second half and just sort of let it loose with Riley Leonard and especially Jaden Greathouse at receiver.
Yeah, Jaden Greathouse had an amazing game. I think it was 6 catches for 128 yards, 2 touchdowns, all in the second half. He was fun to talk to after the game. I mean, he was choking back the tears, and he was also very defiant. He was kind of going back and forth between the two, but I do think he's very determined. And that's the one thing, you went to the press conferences, we kind of split duties, and I went to the locker room, and it was just with assistant coaches, with the players, there's this feeling that they're moving forward. It felt like the other times it's been kind of there's been a rude awakening element to it. And this felt like more just an awakening, that they were in a position to make progress. And I believe that they will. I think if they keep doing some of the same things, I know somebody on the board mentioned, well, they got to close the gap with wide receivers. Absolutely. Wide receiver recruiting needs to be better, but the checklist isn't long. The pieces that are missing isn't a long list. And again, there are a lot of good things that they're doing, and I think they just need to do more of it. And again, fill in the gaps, wide receiver recruiting, and I would say defensive line recruiting too.
Yeah, I think I wanted to highlight the fumble that Drake Bowen forced. He was one of the guys you talked to. There's just sort of the one of the examples of the heart that Notre Dame was showing. Like, that what Ohio State was driving again, and it sort of felt like, oh, here we go again. And I remember even thinking, like, during that play when they got the ball to Ibuka, I was like, wow, well, that was really well designed. Chip Kelly's doing whatever he wants to do against Al Golden, and then all of a sudden Drake Bowen forces a fumble. Kingston Viliamu Asa picks it up and recovers it, and Notre Dame was able to ride that momentum and get an important stop defensively, and the offense sort of kept swinging with throwing at Jaden Grayhouse, throwing at Mitchell Evans, getting some defensive secondary penalties on Ohio State. And I don't know, like it feels like Notre Dame needed to run the ball better, but also it's like, well, what if they would have been throwing it more frequently like they did in the second half? I don't know. Like to me, I think like Riley Leonard needs for him to throw the way he was throwing in the second half. It feels like he's got to be in a situation where he is pushed into that position. Like I don't know that he comes out and throws the ball with sort of reckless abandon in the same way at the beginning of games as he did in that second half, and he was just letting his guys make plays. And I don't know that he is as aggressive coming out of the gate, and I think that might have hurt Notre Dame a little bit.
Well, as we turn the page to 2025, they're going to have spring practice pretty soon. We're so deep into January. There's going to be a lot of things that happen. There's going to be a lot of churn after this. So there wasn't before the playoff run, but, there's going to be probably some assistant coaches that leave. There was a report Monday night that and it still is Monday night in my mind, even though we're into Tuesday morning, but that Al Golden is the leading candidate for the Cincinnati Bengals vacancy. And it sounds like it would be his job if he wanted to take it. And there's going to be guys jumping in the transfer portal. They have 4 days, and there's going to be guys declaring for the draft. And they also have a small window that's been extended to them because of the championship. Ohio State will too. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I do think I feel better about where Notre Dame is headed after this game than I have to end the season in a long time.
Yeah, there's not much relaxing for the coaching staff. Saturday, they'll be hosting a bunch of junior recruits as well. So a busy off-season awaits, even though we're already in the latter third of January. But it's going to be an important off-season, an off-season where I think Notre Dame will continue to have high expectations, not just internally, but I think externally. I think this season, rightfully so, put a lot of attention on Notre Dame and raised some eyebrows. And I think people are like, wait, what's Marcus Freeman got going on there? How sustainable is this? Is this a long-term thing? Like you got to earlier, like it seems like Notre Dame's moving in the right direction. Obviously, quarterback will be the biggest question mark and competition and decision going into next season. You got a bunch of offensive linemen who are veteran, almost too many of them. Obviously, very good running backs, bringing in some more receivers to try to improve that position. So, and I think that the expectations for the defense will remain high, even though they're losing some real heart and soul players to the defense. When you talk about Xavier Watts and Jack Kaiser, Benjamin Morrison, Riley Mills, Howard Cross, those are going to be big losses, and guys are going to have to continue to step up to replace them.
Absolutely. As far as the atmosphere tonight, I mean, I'd be happy if Atlanta hosted every national championship game. They did it well. That stadium is built for it because it can be indoor or outdoor. It was really cold down here in Atlanta. I think it was 19 when I got back to my hotel, and the noise and those two fan bases together it was really, really a very cool moment.
Yeah, they were booing bands and booing anyone that represented the other team. I think there was even people booing troops that were representing the other team that were cheering for Notre Dame. It was a cool experience. Certainly grateful to be there. And while it certainly looked like it was getting out of hand, it came down to a bit of a crazy finish where Eric looks at me and he goes, just so you know, like if Notre Dame comes back and win, I'm not going to have anything ready to post right away because Eric normally does the instant story where it's either game balls or if they lose or what went wrong. And I was like, well, let me start putting together something if Notre Dame wins. And I didn't get very far into that because pretty soon after that, it became clear that Notre Dame wasn't going to be able to complete what would have been a wild comeback. And we would probably been looking at an overtime situation, and that would have been pretty crazy to experience.
The irony with Riley Leonard tonight was he throws for 255 yards in the game where everybody said, well, that'll be his dead end game. He won't be able to throw now. He didn't early.
Right.
He wasn't hitting things early, but 255
All right.
yards.
Well, anything else you want to add before we go, Eric?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to us all season. We're going to have a Football Never Sleep episode on Wednesday night at 7, provided that South Bend doesn't freeze over and we have working internet and those kind of things, and working. We don't have broken pipes or frozen pipes or whatever. But join us at 7 o'clock. We'll talk more. We'll take your questions, your comments, and even your compliments. And Tyler, I've really enjoyed this season with you, and it's not just because I'm sleep deprived.
All right, yeah, it's been a blast, Eric, and we'll keep things rolling with an important offseason like we talked about. That'll be it for Postgame Takeaways. Let us know what your most important takeaways from the game was as well in the comments. And like Eric said, we'll be back Wednesday night for Football Never Sleeps.